Welcome to Merryfield's Gardening Advisor, brought to you by the experts at Merryfield Garden Center. Join us as we discover beautiful plants, new trends, and exciting ideas for your landscape. So let's get growing together. Merryfield's Gardening Advisor, bringing out the best in your garden.
A fun show today. It's the middle of summer and we're looking for cool. And we actually have a topic that's pretty cool and a gentleman that's pretty cool.
Well, thanks.
Good morning, James White.
Morning, Peg. How are you?
I am good. James White is at our Fair Oaks location, and he actually specializes in many things, just one of which is water gardening. And I was saying before, because I've heard some of his stories of an earlier life, as you teasingly say, my past life.
Yeah.
Because he actually is so familiar with water and all the features, whether he's in the water or dealing with
just playing with the water in the garden.
Playing with the water, which is a wonderful thing. And we will be taking your phone calls in the last two segments of the show. And so if you have any questions, particularly in the water gardening area, James can certainly answer them because there's a tremendous amount of expertise in that direction. However, it's not limited to that because he also works our plant clinic information counter at the Fair Oaks location, and he's almost seen it all.
Well, a lot, let's say.
Absolutely. Let's get going with some of this because you're going to be talking about all types of water gardening.
Right. We're going to generally talk about water in the garden today, different ways to have water feature in your garden, from a little bowl to a disappearing fountain or maybe even a larger pond. We're going to try and talk a little bit about everything.
Absolutely. So let's start with some of the simple things. And we actually have a picture because I still believe it's worth 1,000 words, but
right.
He's got 1,000 words for you today too. Okay?
Oh, let's hope so.
Yeah.
This is a great little water gardening bowl. This is a small bowl about 16 inches across, and you can see there's some plants, rocks, and a little water, and of course a couple of frogs have decided to check it out and visit for a little while. It's amazing when you have water in the garden, the animals will take advantage of it in many different ways, and here you can see one frog on the rim of the bowl, and right in the front of the bowl there, a little frog peeping up out, looking in saying, I've already got this bowl, this is my place.
I think it's wonderful actually. I've tested many different types of water gardens in my home. Now, talking about the smaller water gardens, this one actually is probably 16 inches across.
Right.
But they certainly can be bigger.
Certainly. Yeah, we have many sizes of containers that can be used, and some of them are very simple and some of them can be a little bit more elaborate. We have plastic and fiberglass and glazed pottery as well.
And I know even later in the show you were talking about to pump or not to pump.
Yes.
And you can pump in these small gardens too. You can have simple or even more, depending upon size, so
right.
that it doesn't bounce out. But that's easy to do.
You can have a little pump in the garden bowl to make a little sound and move the water around a little bit. And moving water will attract birds and animals more than standing water. And if we're worried about standing water, we can always incorporate a little product called mosquito dunks. It's a little bacteria that is a natural product that would affect the mosquitoes and not allow them to grow in the bowl. So it's completely safe.
And we have another little picture of a small water garden too, because we're going to deal with a few of the smaller water gardens first. I was intrigued with this one.
Yeah, this is great placement in the garden. I love this picture because it depicts a little water gardening bowl right there along the path. Great way to introduce a little water, especially if people have small children. You know, a little water gardening bowl can be a great place for a kid to dabble in the water without any real concern about them falling in. We always want to teach water safety whenever we have water in the garden. But water gardening bowl is a great way to have a few aquatic plants or marginal plants that would grow with wet feet, and introduce something new into your garden. If you don't have a place in the garden for some water-loving plants, this is a great way to introduce that.
And the beauty of these smaller water gardens is they're very movable.
Right, they are mobile. They can be moved around in the garden from season to season. Of course, at the end of the season, we want to clean them out and take the bowl and set it up in the potting shed or in the garage or under the deck.
Absolutely. Now, let's take a quick little break to tell you or remind you that we have tent sales going on at all 3 of our locations, and there's many items there at the tent sale, and they're all 50 to 70 or 75% off. So there's a lot of fun bargains, and a lot of people enjoy coming in to see some of the little occasional things that they can buy. So,
and new merchandise is always coming out. We're always finding stuff in the trailers and bringing it out on a regular basis. So keep visiting.
Yeah, it does change. Yeah. So I'd like to invite you to come and enjoy the tent sales. All right, James, let's continue. You've talked about 3 small ones. We've talked about a small fountain. Now let's get a little bit bigger, and maybe there's some thoughts in the next picture, if we can bring that one up, as to how you can maintain these, because maintenance is a part of water gardening. Right,
absolutely. Whenever we have a little water feature or a pond, we want to be able to maintain it, and like I said before, we have the Mosquito Dunks product that allows for mosquito control in a very natural, organic manner. And in this situation here, we've got a little fountain. The water rises up through the little boy, spills out from the upper portion of his hand there, down over his body into the pool below. This is a great little thing to have, you know, a little whimsy, introduce a little interest and a little whimsy into the garden. We like to have fun, and water gardening is another way to introduce a little interest into the garden.
And you can get a little bigger than that.
Oh, absolutely.
Bring up the next picture.
Yep, the things come in all sizes. This is a wonderful little garden that was installed, and it actually offers great plantings as well as a little sitting area for taking a little break and sitting by this little waterfall and listening to the noise that it creates. Waterfalls can be great, small ones or large ones, or fountains as well can generate white noise, which can help to drown out some city noise around your home maybe. Combination of plantings and a little waterfall can create a real oasis in a small space.
And in the next picture, actually, it gives a little close-up of that same waterfall.
Right, there you can see the waterfall, and that's going to generate a little water noise, which some people would consider like a white noise to help drown out surrounding noises. And this little feature can create plenty of noise because it has a little reflection quality there where the sound is reflected out to the sitting area.
I think they've used the stone well in this one.
Very well placed, and the plantings have grown in nicely, so you can really see how it has matured and looks very natural.
And before we leave this segment, we have one more picture to share, and I think James was really enjoying this particular picture. I took it a number of years ago, actually, when I was going through a lovely big garden, and I thought this was interesting and creative.
Right, this is very creative. This is a semi-formal to formal environment, so it's all edged in concrete. This is taking your game up a notch, of course, but if you do have a semi-formal or formal garden, this is a great way to create a point of interest. It's a great focal point in the garden, and you can see the plants. We can use many different types of plants in the water features to create new elements of design.
I think it's wonderful, and we need to take a break, and when we come back, James is going to share with you some products and some of the things that really help to make these things work. We'll see you in a moment. Welcome back to Mary Hill's Gardening Advisor, and to our guest, James White, who is quite the water specialist, really. James has wonderful big koi ponds. He's into the fish, he's into the water, he loves the plants, and so today he's sharing a lot of that expertise with you. And I know you've brought a few products along to share with our viewing public out there too.
Yeah, if I can try to show this bowl. I want to particularly show the interior. I love how the glaze is a different lighter blue and then has this beautiful rustic quality outside here. Wonderful little bowl to get started with, and these come in different sizes. They come in sets actually, and this is the small one. They come in a medium and then a much larger version. So this is a great way to get started in the garden. And we're going to add one more thing real quick. This is a bamboo fountain that comes complete with its own little pump, complete set, and it just straddles the bowl kind of like this, and you can see where it's instant. You just plug it in, put the water in, and the water pours out of the little spout right here back into the bowl. Gives you that sound. You can use this indoors or outdoors. It's a wonderful, quick way to have an instant water feature in your house or in your garden, on your deck.
And the beauty of this, we're all worried about the mosquitoes, but well, the beauty of that is with the pump and the moving water, you don't have to worry about it.
Exactly. With the pump, it moves the water, and the mosquito larvae really can't survive well in the moving water. Again, we can use the natural product to eliminate the mosquito larvae, so they're not a problem for us.
Right. I love those bowls.
Yeah, they're a real fun way to go.
Put the little pump in.
And to add interest in the evening or nighttime, we can add a light system into the garden. This is low voltage lighting. It's very easy to set up. It's a self-contained kit. Everything's there. You just plug it in and it works, comes on automatically with the timer or a daylight sensor included. Wonderful. And it's LED. The new products are LED. Anytime that we're playing around with water, we like to use a little water conditioner. This helps make the water more useful for the plants. It detoxifies heavy metals and chlorines, and it allows for fish if we choose to have fish. But it's a good thing to use whether we have city water or well water. Sometimes well water can be a little pH imbalanced and can be hard on the plants. So whenever we use water conditioner, we're ensuring that the water is going to be in good condition for the bowl.
Right. How often, well, of course one needs to follow the directions, but do you have to use that frequently?
You would only add that product when you add new water into the bowl or pond system, and that wouldn't be required for a fountain necessarily.
No.
Right.
No.
But we do have a product, many products for keeping algae out of the fountain so that your fountain doesn't turn green with algae, and that's like a weekly dosage, like a teaspoon for the gallons, and it's very easy to use. This is another fun thing. This is a
there you go.
Water lily, an artificial water lily. If your water lilies in your pond aren't blooming, you can throw one of these in for a party. They're quite popular. They come in different sizes as well. We have smaller ones. Let's see if I can show you a small one as well. This is a smaller version. So if you have a smaller bowl, you can use something that's a little bit more to scale, and they do come in a few different colors. Just fun for throwing the garden into the water garden real quick for a quick dress up, maybe for a party.
A party, or if you're like me and you've got a fair amount of shade, and your water lilies don't bloom terribly well.
Yeah, sometimes if we don't have a lot of sunlight, the water lilies will be limited somewhat in their blooming, so we can toss one of these artificials in and have a little extra pop in the garden.
Yeah, a little color going on. You know, I know there are a lot of purists around. I really don't happen to be one of them. You know.
We've got to have,
I think it's fun to enjoy some of these things every now and then.
It's good to have a little variety, and like I said, especially for a party, if you're going to have folks over, you might want to dress it up a little bit.
Right, that's good. Any other helpful hints over there?
Yeah, I'd like to point out that we have small water pumps, small submersible pumps that can be plugged in and installed in any size feature, small, medium, or large. This allows for the water to be moving. This is the same kind of fountain or same kind of pump that we'd hook up to a fountain to allow the water to flow, like we showed in some of the pictures, and we'll be showing in some more pictures. This little pump's very energy efficient and designed to work constantly, 24/7. I do recommend taking pumps out in the wintertime and storing them in the garage where they won't be subject to freezing, unless they're in a water garden where they would need to run the water garden over the winter.
And you know, because I have some similar to this, a little bit bigger, there is maintenance to that too.
Yes.
You do need to lift and clean, even though it has that one
guard,
has a little protective guard.
Right. It does have a guard to stop leaves and debris from going into the pump and clogging it up. That needs to be serviced periodically, like Peg was saying. Remove it from the water periodically and rinse it off with the hose so that it doesn't collect any leaves or debris. But that does extend the pump's life, and it'll make it last for years if you take a little care of it.
My garden, as James knows my garden, my water gardens well, the larger one had a pump in it for at least 12 years.
Right, yeah.
And recently I had to replace it, and James, of course, helped me with that replacement. But it's great, and all I did was lift it out and clean it out probably once a month.
Yeah. 12 years is a really long service life, so Peg did a real good job of servicing her pump and keeping it clean and useful for many years. One last item real quick. This is a small pressurized filter. This can be placed adjacent to the pond and hidden by the plantings, and the water's pumped from the pond into this and back into the pond. And that allows for filtration, a little bit of biological filtration as well as mechanical filtration of physically removing the solids. These come in all shapes and sizes. I just had a small one I wanted to bring in and share with you today.
I'm interested in that because I've never used it, but I have heard people who really do enjoy having this.
Yes, it can absolutely render more clear water, which that's the point of this for most of us, is to have clear water where we can enjoy seeing the fish or seeing the plants in the pond. And clear water definitely looks much healthier when your friends and family come over to view the pond with you. It's a lot more impressive if it's clear.
And you can see the fish.
Right, you can see the fish.
Absolutely. Well, James will have a lot more to share with you as we go along, but it's break time, so we'll be back in a moment. Welcome back to Mary Field's Gardening Advisor and to Water in the Garden, the cooling effect. I truly, James, you know how much I enjoy and I know you do.
Yes,
okay?
absolutely.
Because he grows the koi and loves the koi. And I have goldfish in my pond.
I have goldfish too. We love goldfish too.
But we were saying earlier, to pump or not to pump. What size water garden do you need for your garden? And so we're really going to continue with some of this thought process, and if we bring up the next picture, this is interesting too.
Well, this is a great way to introduce some water plants, some bog plants, if you will, sometimes referred to as marginal plants. These are plants that grow in wet feet. These are the guys that need a little extra water, and they grow on the edge of the pond or in a natural wet environment. Sometimes you'll find them, in a bog or a creek side. These guys would want a little extra water, so we introduce them in the garden by creating a little oasis for them, if you will. We use a small piece of liner and tuck it into the ground and build some rock maybe around it, or as you see here. And then that water is maintained in the rubber sheet of liner, and so it doesn't dissipate into the ground. It's refilled by the rain periodically, or we give it a little help with the hose once in a while. And these plants thrive in this environment, and it can be very small. As you see here, it's just a small area, just a little surprise in the garden, a way to introduce some different plants.
And you know, one of those different plants, James, is horsetail, as it's called, the scouring plant.
Right, the scouring plant.
Equisetum. And this is the plant you want to contain.
Right, yes. We're talking about Equisetum, the horsetail reed. It's very interesting. People used to use it to scrub their pots and pans at the creek side. There's a large stand of it down at Great Falls on the beach area there. Some of the viewers might recognize that area I'm describing. Large stand of it. And anytime I'm in Great Falls, I have to walk down and just look at it. As Peg mentioned, it's best if it's contained a bit in the garden. We'd like to grow that in a container or in the little bog that we just showed, where it's contained by the rubber liner. It can't root out. It can be a little bit of a surprise if we don't contain it in the garden, because it'll show up in places we might not expect. Some might call it invasive. We'd like to call it vigorous.
I think it can be vigorous in the right place. Right. And I believe that this one dates back to prehistoric times.
Yes,
there's a reason for that.
Right, it's a very old plant, and the reason for that is it's very successful, you know.
That's right, when it's happy.
It's a real survivor.
And I love it, it's interesting. And as an arranger.
Right. People love it for
incredible.
cut. Right. People love it for cut flower arrangements. People come ask for it at the store all the time. It gives you a vertical structure, and it looks like a reed, and it does have very interesting round ridges on it with different color. Also, you can use papyrus or cypress, which is another plant that likes wet feet, and it gives a very interesting look. It rises up out of the ground from a spike, and then it has like a firework explosion on top, also called a little umbrella palm. We sell those in the tropical greenhouse and also in the water gardens department, and it comes in different sizes. There's dwarf and larger varieties, and they're wonderful. They are tropical in nature, so if you want to maintain those, you'd have to bring them in the fall before freezing temperatures, which they can survive quite nicely in a bright window with plenty of moisture.
And they're very, very interesting too. The next picture actually shows you a little close-up of one of those small gardens.
Right. This is construction of the small garden that you saw in the earlier picture. This is just a small piece of rubber sheet liner that's been tucked into a small hole and then filled in with some rocks to help hold it in place. Then we fill that with water and place the plants inside. Plant a few more plants around the exterior of it, and it's very simple, very easy way to have a small bog garden right in your backyard.
It's a lot of fun too, and it can be very small. In the following picture, we get into the fountains, which are very easy for anybody to have. Right.
This is another great placement. This fountain has got nice plantings around it, and it gives real dramatic interest in the garden, a little bit more formal, and it's going to fit in many, many garden environments.
And the next picture actually is one of my absolute favorites, and this happens to be in my own garden, and James was very instrumental in helping me to get the functioning of this set up. It's really the disappearing fountain, but I chose to build it above ground so that you could sit on the edges.
Yeah, this was a great application for a disappearing fountain. Many of you know Peg has a beautiful garden, and it's filled with large trees. It's an older established woodland garden, so it's filled with many mature trees, and of course Peg's very sensitive about her environment, so she didn't want to disturb the roots of these trees. So she came to me and she asked me a couple years ago, could I have a disappearing fountain in my garden? And we thought about it and we said sure. So we went over to Peg's house and we built this disappearing fountain for her. It's installed above ground. There was no digging involved. No roots were harmed in the construction of this fountain. It has a plastic basin, which you can't really see in this picture, but we'll show it soon. And then it's surrounded by the rocks, and it does have electricity to power the pump, and the pump runs year-round. It fills the urn, and the urn bubbles down the side, so it's a constant moving water feature. There's no need for any mosquito control, and it really attracts the birds from Peg's garden. They come and they get water there all year round.
And I do want to quickly mention the plant that you saw next to that, and hold with this just for a second, because I do want you to have the opportunity to talk a little bit about this, because this is the mechanics behind it.
Yes. In the previous shot, we were showing a clumping form of bamboo that's a very slow growing bamboo. When we built this fountain a couple years back, Peg installed this bamboo, and you can see in just a couple of years it's matured to a beautiful specimen. It makes a wonderful backdrop for this fountain, and it does not take over the entire garden. With a little bit of proper division over years, you can keep this thing in check, and it's a wonderful, beautiful feature.
And so let's quickly talk about the mechanics.
Right. This is the basin that we mentioned. This is installed with a rock surround in this case. This is the structure that holds the water. You can see the access panel's been removed in the back of the shot there, where you can access the pump for service and removal for the winter. The plastic grid there allows the stones to lay on top, and the water trickles down through the stones in the grid and is contained in the underground chamber.
And we have just, before we leave this segment, just a couple of pictures, 3 I think, to show we're talking to pump or not to pump.
Right.
Having the waterfall, you definitely need a pump.
Right, yeah. And when we have a pump in the waterfall or a stream situation, one of the rules of pumping is 100 gallons per hour per inch of width on stream or waterfall. So Peg's pump is about 1,200 gallons per hour, and this stream is about 12 to 14 inches across, and it bubbles down over the rocks. It creates oxygen for the fish. Peg is all natural there in her garden, and you can see the lovely Japanese maple that's cascading over the edge there, the bright green tree on the right side of the shot.
I really have enjoyed this garden, and we're talking about the many benefits of the water garden, one of which you said is the noise factor. It masks a lot of noise.
Right.
It really does, but I have never used the lights. I think that would be fun.
Yes.
You know?
Yeah, the lights can really add a lot of nighttime interest to the pond, and it creates a very dramatic effect.
I think so. Now, there are a couple more pictures. There's the one coming up. We're saying to pump or not to pump. You can have these big, beautiful ponds without waterfalls.
Right. You can have a larger pond without a waterfall and no pump required. We call it all natural. We use the plants to help maintain the water quality in that case. And if we have a little bit of shade, that's a wonderful thing and a good area for a no-pump situation like Peg's garden.
One more pick, James, and then we'll go out on a break.
Just love this stream. This is a great example of a stream cascading down through the garden here with a little bit of lawn on either side of it, and it allows for a nice noise and a beautiful look.
I think it's lovely, and I do enjoy that bridge and being able to walk over the water traveling down that hill. Okay, it's break time. We'll be back in a moment. So there's all kinds of water in the garden. Welcome back to Merrifield's Gardening Advisor and to James White, our water specialist today, as we're talking about the wonderful world of introducing water into your garden and the many ways to do it.
Yeah.
Yeah, and we really, it's not just the water that we're introducing into the garden, because I find the next picture very fascinating. We took this a couple of years ago, and frogs are fantastic, really.
Yes. They're great visitors to the garden. They could be a surprise sometimes, so if you do introduce water into the garden, be on the lookout, because usually a frog will find it.
Absolutely. We've got a cute picture of a bullfrog. They're fascinating to me.
Yes. And, you know, frogs eat a lot of insects in the garden, so they're a great helper to have out in your garden. And a small amount of water can be an invitation for a frog to visit your garden or stay in the garden for a bit during the season. Of course, everybody knows that frogs can make noise, so sometimes in the early spring when the frogs are getting active, they can be a little bit loud at night, so keep that in mind. Every year we get a call about, how do I get the frogs out of my water garden? So sometimes when we build it, they will come. But they eat a lot of insects. They do a lot of beneficial insect eating out there in the garden. They're great for consuming slugs, so if you have a hosta collection and you fight the slug battle, then a good frog or a toad in your garden is a great asset.
I do have the frogs. I don't see the toads in my garden, which is amazing, really.
Yeah, if you've got a lot of frogs, sometimes the toads will be a little bit more secretive, but I know you've got toads in your garden because you've got a beautiful wooded garden, so there's got to be some toads out there hiding around too.
I just haven't seen them.
Yeah.
Well, the next picture is I know a major love for James.
Yeah, a lot of my focus is koi, but I do enjoy, plants, and I help anybody with any level of water gardening, so you don't have to be a koi collector for me to help you. We do like koi in the garden sometimes, but koi need a purpose-built pond, and I try to talk to people as much as I can about a purpose-built koi pond. It would be a little bit deeper so that less access for predators, a lot more filtration because koi need very healthy water conditions to thrive and grow. So a koi pond is a purpose-built thing. If you introduce koi into the water garden, as they get bigger, they can be a little bit destructive with your plants and a little bit challenging. Some folks really enjoy their bright colors, but as they grow, they can be a little bit of a problem with plants because they do like to eat plants, and I can't keep any plants with my koi because they will consume them, so I keep my plants separate in water gardening bowls.
Or in the bog situation.
Yeah, or in the bog situation.
To it, and if we roll those, I love the way you rolled that picture, but let's do that again. Roll to the next picture, because it could definitely be a bog garden adjacent to it, and some of the plants that are
right. We can use a bog garden as our filtration in a water garden or a pool situation, where we pump the water up from the main pool and through a separate connected pool where the bog plants and water hyacinths are located. Those plants remove nutrients and chemistries from the water, which actually helps to purify the water in a natural way. So a long-standing method has been a bog adjacent to the pond.
And let's bring up that picture. Let's go back and bring up that next picture. This has a lot of water plants in it.
Right.
Water hyacinths, it has lotus, it has other things.
Right. We've got the green and white striped chorus there in the right corner, top right corner, with the vertical aspect, and then we've got the water lily pads, the big green circular pads, which everybody recognizes, and those of course are going to produce flowers. And we can have some goldfish in there. They help with mosquito control, they add a little interest, and they won't consume the plant, so goldfish can be a very plant-friendly fish.
And this one I love.
A lot of people enjoy lotus. This is a wonderful plant. It needs wet feet, so it can grow in the little bog like we discussed earlier, or it can be in a bowl. It is a wonderful asset in the garden because the leaves are very interesting and saucer shaped, and they have a velvety texture, and when rain accumulates on them, it actually lays on them like pearls almost, round circular beads. It's beautiful.
And the next picture actually is a plant that in Florida or in warm areas is horrifically invasive, but it's not here.
No, this is a tropical water hyacinth, and it will flower periodically. It'll give these beautiful little white and purple flowers with the yellow specks. Interesting little plant, does a lot of work in our water garden or bowl because it absorbs a lot of nutrients. It has a large root system that just hangs down in the water. This is a floating plant, so it can be introduced lots of different ways. Koi will eat the roots off of it if they're larger, and so it can be difficult to maintain with them, but a beautiful little plant that gives surprises like this.
And in the next picture is a plant that I also enjoy. I don't get blooms from these plants because mine has a little too much shade, but marvelous.
Yeah. Peg has some large trees surrounding her pond, but this is a tropical water lily. We get these in the garden center usually in May or June when the temperatures have warmed up. And now this is used as an annual a lot of times here, or as a tender bulb where it would be brought in and wintered over inside over the winter. But the great thing about the tropical water lily is it's very prolific. It'll outbloom the hardy water lily, so it can be worth a little work and expense if necessary to have these beautiful flowers in the garden. And it's the same price as a hardy water lily, but it's definitely going to produce twice the flowers. And sometimes they're vigorous enough to flower in the shade.
And how about getting a little creative, maybe?
Right. We always like to have a little laugh, and this is a very interesting picture of an exercise bike that somebody's repurposed into the water garden. And you can see the water pouring out of the handlebar there. It's been plumbed. Somebody was very creative with this.
And wonderful plants that are in the background that people may not think of. Definitely needs to be in shallow water or in a bog garden.
Right, bog garden or just a wet feed environment. They don't like to grow completely submerged, but the taro is the large leaf plant in the background there. It's a wonderful larger type of plant, so it will grow to 2 to 3 feet tall. Gives you those wonderful shield leaves, and it comes with different color foliage.
And I'm always talking about the fairy garden, and this actually was taken at the Fair Oaks location where Ramiro has set up the most incredible small, but it is pumped.
Right. This is a very small scale. It's one of the fairy garden features that Peg talks about a lot of times. This is a small concrete bridge that goes over a little stream that's only a few inches wide, and then there's a small pump that pumps water through the system that allows for this little stream to come alive.
And in the next picture, and I will be, this one I told James, I've put this little one in my fairy garden, and I actually recreated a tiny one here on the set, which I'm sure we'll get to see a little better at some point.
Yeah.
But I want to remind you that We will be taking phone calls. We will be taking a break. So get your questions ready for James. We'll be back in a moment. Welcome back to Merrifield's Gardening Advisor and to James White, our water specialist. And I think we have a caller on the line. Is that correct? Yes. We have a caller?
How are you?
Good morning.
Good morning. Thank you. I'm calling a couple things. I have a pond in my yard, and I just heard you say something about being able to overwater your pond flowers. I have the water hyacinth. So I wanted to ask how to do that. And the other part of that is my husband doesn't always run the pond, to keep the water flowing.
The pump?
Yes, the pump. Thank you. But I noticed it's just the same that we do have frogs, and the water, and I guess the mosquitoes that land on there, I guess the frogs eat them or whatever. I just want to know what's the best way to do it. Run all the time or occasionally?
Well, you can be successful in both ways. I prefer to run the pump 24/7. But when you don't have high-value fish, you can certainly take a little opportunity to turn it off and save some electricity sometimes. If you run it periodically, normally that amount of movement would be enough to eliminate mosquito larvae. And if you just had a few goldfish, they wouldn't mind it being turned off sometimes. The benefit is that you maintain a little better oxygen content, and that allows for the beneficial bacteria to thrive. So it definitely helps the ecosystem of the pond if it's running constantly. But many of my customers have a situation where they turn it off intermittently and they achieve clear water. And with the right balance, absolutely you could do it both ways. To the water hyacinth, as far as wintering it over, it would really require very bright light, and they're not very expensive. I don't know that they're really worth wintering over, but the tropical water lily that I was mentioning is about $40, so it's like buying a little bit more expensive plant, and they can be wintered over successfully, very similar to wintering over a dahlia or other tender bulbs that you'd need to keep over the winter.
Okay.
Thank you, Diane, for calling.
Thank you so
and
much.
I hope that answered your questions.
Yes, it did. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you. And I think we have another lady on the phone. Is it Gretchen?
Yes, how are you? Hi, John.
Good morning.
Hello.
Good morning. And you have a question for James?
Yes, I have a koi pond. I've had it almost 20 years now. And this year I have algae. I cannot get rid of it. I've used microlith. I've used green up. I have filtration. And I don't know what to do. When I opened the pond up this spring, the water was fine. After my fish spawned, it cleared up, but it then just went crazy.
So the problem is you've got more algae this year than you've had in previous years?
Yes.
And are we talking about green water algae,
Yes.
where the water's like pea soup?
Yes.
Okay. Well, frequently we find that there's a little bit of excess nutrient in the pond, so make sure that there's nothing laying around on the bottom. Do you have an ultraviolet sterilizer, a
Yes.
UV?
I have UV. I have a filter that's got 10 bristles and about 5 pads.
Okay. Has the UV light been serviced recently? Has
Yes.
the bulb been changed?
Yes.
Okay. Well, that's a good question. You might want to do a test for phosphate and see if you've got a phosphate buildup in the pond. A lot of times phosphate can really supercharge an algae bloom. Do you do water changes periodically?
Yes, I do.
Well,
I did it about 2 weeks ago, and to no avail. I do test the pond, the nitrates, the phosphate, the ammonia, and pH was all fine.
Your chemical parameters are usually in balance?
Yes, they are.
Wow, you're really challenging me on this one. You might have to call me at the Fair Oaks store so we can go into greater depth with this, because usually once you change the UV light bulb, that usually clears it up. So you got me a little bit stumped here today, but I'm working every day but Sunday and Tuesday, so call me at the Fair Oaks store if you could.
I will certainly do that.
You'll be going back there.
Yes, I will be at the store.
give him a little time.
Yeah, later I'll be headed back to the store. Usually and I'll work until 8 o'clock. So if you need to, give me a call today. We'll try and work through it.
I will do that. Thank you so much.
Thank you for calling, Gretchen, and good luck. And I think we have one more call that we can take in this segment.
All right.
And I believe we have a lady on the line. Is that correct?
Hello, no, this is Raymond.
Oh, Raymond,
Hi.
I beg your pardon. I was listening to what James had to say, and I didn't quite hear your name. Thank you, Raymond.
Not a problem at all. First off, may I say, my wife Beverly and I both love your show.
Thank you.
And it's created a new job for me on Saturday mornings to have everything ready for her when she comes down at 8 a.m. The reason I'm calling is I'm trying to find out whether or not there's any kind of solar or battery-operated pumps.
There are solar pumps. I don't have any battery-operated pumps at the store. We've tested many of the solar pumps. We find that they're okay for a fountain, but when they get cloudy, when the sky clouds up, the solar pumps really reduce their flow or don't pump. So the biggest problem with the solar pumps is they're expensive. They usually come designed together with the solar panel, and the pump is incorporated to it. And the solar panel can be an expensive proposition. So normally for a really good unit, you're going to be paying a few $100s.
Okay.
We haven't found one that would really support a pond, but they definitely could support a water feature or a fountain.
That's a very interesting thought process, and we're getting new products all the time.
Right, yeah, and the technology is advancing, but right now the most expensive component is the solar panel, and they're always designed together. The panel puts out the appropriate voltage for the pump.
I understand. Well, needless to say, thank you so much for your information.
Thank
and
you.
It looks like I'm going to have to run some electricity out to the yard now.
I think you may.
Yep.
Thank you, Raymond, for calling, and thank you for watching. And we will take a break, and we will be back. So more questions for James. Welcome back to Merrifield's Gardening Advisor, and to our topic, water gardens. And I think we have another caller on the line. Okay. Hello. Good morning, Joan.
Morning.
Do you have a question, Joan? Hello, Joan, are you there?
I can barely hear you.
Okay, Joan.
Yes.
Did you have a question?
Yes,
for
I
James?
did. I have been watching your show for years, and I enjoy it. We have a pond in our backyard, and we have primarily goldfish, shabbunkins, and comets, and we're getting overrun with them. Is there any suggestion you can do? Do we just throw them away, or what do we do to keep the numbers down?
Well, a lot of times when folks have a very successful water garden and prolific fish, they do run into this problem where the population grows and grows. A lot of times we have to find a place that we can donate the fish to. Many times we can take some donations at the water gardens at the Fair Oaks store, but we do get our share of refugees sometimes. I hate to say to throw them away, but if you do need to find a new home for some adoptees, you can give us a call at the store maybe, or also you can check on Craigslist, as well as some places that have water features. Some commercial places that have water features will take adoptees as long as they're healthy. So sometimes placing refugee fish can be a little bit of a challenge.
Oh,
I live very
I'm
near
assuming
you.
they're healthy because they're reproducing so well. But I think we have about 1,600 gallons in this pond, and I think we have 100 fish by now.
Oh, my goodness.
Well, it can certainly support 100 fish, but I'd say you're a really good fish parent.
Absolutely, because I don't seem to have that luck. I think I also have some ragoons, you know. I live very close to you, Joan, so maybe I could use some of your
Maybe you
shabbunkins.
can have some of mine.
But
Okay.
I do, and I'm serious. One thing I do want to say, and I'm sure you'll back me up, James, please do not release fish into our natural streams.
Right.
That is a no-no.
Right.
You know?
Yeah, we ask you not to release fish into the natural stream or natural environment. We do get refugee koi sometimes at the garden center where they've been pulled from the local parks, because that's one of the jobs of the local park folks is to remove the non-native species. So please don't release them into the wild.
Okay.
That can create some problems, and we do appreciate your phone call, Joan, and thank you for watching.
Okay, well, I'll give the store a call then and see if they want any of them, and maybe you want some, Peggy.
I do.
Okay, thank you.
Joan.
Goodbye.
I think we have another caller on the line, and of course we're always running out of time on this show. Yes, Cynthia, good morning. And you have a question for James?
Yes, good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning.
This is Cynthia.
Yes, Cynthia. What is your question, Cynthia?
I have 3. I know we're talking about water features, but I'm desperate. I have 3 hydrangeas bushes. I've had them now for over, I want to say, 6 years. Each year they get larger and larger and more blooms. This year, 2 of them have no blooms. The other only has 2. And now I have these big, green, beautiful leaves, but no.
It's called winter damage,
Right.
but please run with this, James.
Right. I work at the plant clinic at the Fair Oaks store, and we've been having this question all season. Even my mother has 7 hydrangeas and very few blossoms. The problem for everybody is this winter we saw extreme cold temperatures. My house in Annandale, we went below 5 degrees more than 3 times, and the hydrangeas froze back. They froze all the way to the ground, so they produced new shoots and lots of green foliage, but unfortunately those large flowering varieties flower on new second-year wood, and all that wood was lost. So this year we've got a big leaf show. Next year hopefully we'll have a big flower show.
I hope so too, Cynthia, and I hope that answered your question because we're running out of time.
Yes.
I am very pleased that you were able to join us today because I love water gardening, and I know from the questions that we received, all of you do also.
Thank you.
And so we want to say thank you for watching our show because I think we have wonderful guests and great topics. And
may I say happy birthday to Peg. It's her birthday today, and I want to get that in.
Oh, thank you, James. Everybody was very sweet yesterday. We had a lovely luncheon. It's great. So we will see you next week when David will be here talking about extreme gardening conditions. Thank you for watching.